So for all my viewers here in the US, we're about 2 weeks away from celebrating Christmas. I thought I might do this video to recap a couple of the games from this year that have been samurai or ninja themed games. It's been a really good year, so I'm going to cover Sekiro, Nioh 1, even though it's from 2017, because Nioh 2 came out this year, and also Ghost of Tsushima. So let's get started. So originally my review of Ghost, Nioh, and Sekiro went over 45 minutes with editing. I decided to break it up into 3 videos, so if you take a look on my channel, there are reviews for the other 2 games as well. Now let's go ahead and get started with this one. Okay, for Ghost of Tsushima, I've completed the entire game from the first part. There's DLC that brought a new game plus, which I'm about halfway through. I've done all the mythic tales, I've done all the side missions, so I've done 100% of the game all the way through from that first playthrough, so I know everything that the game has to offer for that. Now, Ghost of Tsushima came out earlier this year, 2020. It had the first DLC, which added the new game plus, which a lot of people were asking for. That's been kind of fun to be able to go back through the game with all of your equipment from the previous game, because then you can simply run through with the samurai armor or sort of the character that you want to play in the first game. And there are a few different ways to play the game, but you can play that way for the entire game without having to get through part of the game to unlock the stuff that you want to play as. So New Game Plus, even though it's the same story, the same characters, the same events, has been fun for that. And the story is fantastic, so replaying it has actually been really fun. Now there was also an update for it in the DLC that brought something called Legends in. That you have to have PlayStation Plus for. It's a 4-player online mode. I've heard that it has some of the Oni and sort of mythical type things for that are not humans in normal places and events. So I can't really check that one out, so I'm not going to really cover that for this review. I've heard a lot of good things about it, so if you have PlayStation Plus and you like doing online multiplayer, this might be a plus for you. Unfortunately, I just don't have too much information for it. Now, as far as platforms, this one, unlike Sekiro and Nioh 2, are a PlayStation exclusive. It came out for the PS4. It is viable on the PS5. I've heard that the frame rate and graphics are better. I don't have a PS5. I'm not really interested in getting one right now with all the hype. Maybe later on, once things chill out and people aren't trying to scalp them for $1,000. But for right now, it's out for PS4, and I would definitely recommend it. Now, as far as the difficulty, unlike Sekiro and Nioh 2, there are actual selectable difficulty levels. And beyond that, there are a few other things you can do to increase or decrease the difficulty. In the game, you unlock charms, which can do things like give you reduced damage from attacks or better healing. If you simply don't equip those things, then that makes the game a little bit harder. There's also, from the DLC, a charm called the Curse of Frailty, which means you die in 1 hit, which is probably about as hard as you could make the game for that. So the variety of difficulty levels on this means it goes everywhere from easy all the way to like hard or insane. It's completely up to you for whatever difficulty level you want and how difficult or how easy you want it to be, which is nice because that means this game appeals to a broad variety of gamers. As for the environment, it is outstanding. The developers have actually been to Tsushima. They know exactly what it looked like. They've recreated stuff very well within the game. Just everything about it looks really good. The ambient sounds are great. I've heard they actually recorded some sounds from over there and used them in the game. Sucker Punch has just done a phenomenal game with the environment on this. You can ride around on a horse. There's a lot of little effects to things. As you're riding the horse through a field with like the tall grass, every now and then your character will just put his hand down to feel the grass. There's just so many cool things about the environment. It is one of the best environments that I've seen in games to date. Now, as far as the setting, just like Sekiro and Nioh, it's based on Japan. However, it's actually based on the real island of Tsushima. It's not a one-to-one scale recreation, but it covers the feel and the general idea of Tsushima. It wasn't meant to be a perfect replica, just good enough for the game. So there's a little divergence on that, but I had no issues with it. It's based on the actual historical first Mongol invasion. although it does use a few fictitious characters. The main character did not exist. Another character that you meet early on, that name didn't exist until the 14th century, which was after the Mongol invasion happened. There's just a few other things like that that are not quite historical, but I don't fault it because the developers said up front, we want a game that is going to be a really cool tribute to samurai and samurai type movies. We're not making a documentary. So they've said up front, look, this isn't meant to be a historical documentary, so I don't take any fault with what they've done with it. And the characters that they've created for it are actually really cool, so it's definitely good. Now for world type, it is 100% open world, aside from a couple small warp points between little bits of the island that you can't get between sometimes. It is 100% open world in that you can start walking here and walk all the way to the far end. There's no warp zones, there's no maps in between things for that, so very much an open world and immersive open world game. It's really cool. There's no little mini map in the bottom that has a radar that points you at things. You have the guiding winds. The actual wind in the environment guides you towards your next objective. You can see it going in the direction that it wants you to take, which is really cool. If you get to a high spot and you look out in the distance and you see a big plume of smoke out there, or something else that looks like you should go check it out, since it is full open world, just start riding off in that direction. When you get there, there's almost always a point of interest or something else that it's trying to draw you towards. So the open world immersion is just fantastic. And some of these things that they've gotten rid of, the tropes of the little mini map and radar, just bring the immersion another level closer on this. It is just fantastic. Now as far as the combat, once you progress through the game, you eventually unlock 4 different stances: the stone stance, the water stance, the wind stance, and the moon stance. Each of those 4 stances is more effective against certain types of enemies, and you have a light attack, a heavy attack, and a charged attack in each. So there's quite a few attacks that you can use, so there's a good bit of variety to the combat. Now one of the limitations to this combat is that your primary weapon is always a katana. Unlike Neo, there's not katana, dual swords, odachi, kusarigama, and a variety of those. It's always simply the katana. You do get to upgrade it throughout the game, but that's the only primary weapon you get. You will get some ghost-specific weapons. I'm not going to spoil the story for that, but those are inventory-type weapons that are limited in use that you have to get more of, so they're not really viable as a primary weapon. Your primary weapon is and will always be the katana. It would be cool to see some options for that in future DLCs, but I don't really have my hopes up on that too much. They focus so much of the game around the katana as the stereotypical, well-known samurai weapon. I think they're going to stick with that theme. Now, as far as character type, it's a little bit of character specialization through charms and what type of equipment you choose to wear, but there are no specific skills that you unlock that are dedicated to a certain tree. Once you get to the end of the game and your legend is maxed, you can have all of the skills for everything. So by the end of the game, everybody's main character is exactly the same as someone else's. The only variance in that is the equipment and the sub-equipment or the charms that you equip with it and how you choose to play the game. There's no diverging path that takes you one way or the other where they don't all eventually converge again. Now for stealth in this game, with a name like Ghost of Tsushima, you've got to assume that there's some stealth in it, and there absolutely is. There are some missions that force stealth, and there are some that make it completely optional, which is one of the nice things about doing a New Game Plus on this. You can play as an archer, you can play as a samurai, you can play as the ghost, which is sort of like a roguish thief, ninja type thing. So each of those different play styles are completely viable for the game, and depending on which ones you want to try out, or even swapping in the middle of the game, since there's no real builds and diverging path for this that don't eventually come together, you can use any type of those at any time. Even if you want to have the big, loud, clunky samurai armor and try to stealth around like that, you can. You're going to be more successful as the ghost because it has certain perks that the other samurai armor will not give you. But even then, you can still try it out, and in some cases, you can succeed with it. I kind of had some fun on a few missions just trying to see if I could get through it playing stealthy as a samurai, and that was pretty fun. You know, there was some spots where I realized, okay, I just can't do this, but oh, okay, I can't stealth through this, but I'm pretty sure I can pop that dude in the head with my longbow and then get through the rest of it. So it's a lot of fun. It brings a lot of variety to it, and I really appreciate that they don't lock you into playing through a specific way. Now, as far as replayability, there is New Game Plus, which does carry over all of your equipment. It also unlocks one additional tier, so if you've maxed everything out on the first playthrough, there's one more tier for all of your equipment. That means the sword, the longbow, the half bow, the specific armors, and other clothing that you can get. I'm not going to say the name of those so I don't spoil anything. The only thing that doesn't get an upgrade is your knife. That comes through maxed out, and there's no way to upgrade it beyond that, which is a little bit of a shame because as you upgrade it, it changes your assassination animations, and I feel like the maxed assassin animation, even though it's the fastest and quietest, isn't quite the coolest. Some of them were kind of cool a little bit earlier, so if I could do it again, I would only upgrade it to like tier 2 instead of the 3rd tier for that. I think that's where the fun animations were. Story depth, I cannot say enough good about this story. The characters are memorable, the story is fantastic. There are a few moments that hit me really, really hard. I actually had to stop at one point because I'll try to think of the best way to say this without too much spoilers. Actually, I'm going to give a jump point here. So, spoiler alert. At one point, you know, as you're playing through the game, your father dies. I won't go into details on that. There's a point where that navigation system that I told you about with the guiding wind, they make some very strong allusions to even though your father is not with you, the guiding wind will take you, and that essentially the guiding wind is your father's spirit. Having lost my father earlier this year and being very close with him, that hit me particularly hard because I'm still struggling to cope with that, and seeing that in the game hit really hard. There's also another character that has some similar events to things that I went through with my father as well, and those were also a little bit rough. Even without those personal tie-ins to it, some of the characters and their storylines are just fantastic. One of my favorites was actually one for the warrior monk, because the way his story develops when you first meet him and where he starts versus where his character arc ends is just wild. It was just such fantastic story. The whole game, the storyline is just fantastic. Playing on New Game Plus, you can skip the cutscenes. I've not skipped a single one because the storytelling and the characters are just fantastic. By far the best between Sekiro, Nioh 1, Nioh 2, and Ghost of Tsushima, hands down. Fantastic story. Although there's no character creation, changing your equipment does change your appearance. So as you try out the different playstyles and you have the different appearance, even though it's the same character, at least you're getting some visual change for it. It's not like Sekiro where it's the same appearance the whole way through the entire game. So there is some variety for that. So best points of Ghost of Tsushima, the storyline is fantastic, the environment is fantastic. Between these games, it's the only one where you actually get to ride a horse, so riding around on the horse is pretty fun. Just like on the Witcher series, things like that. I haven't seen any weird bugs like you would get with Roach. I didn't play a lot of The Witcher 3, but I'm on one of the Reddit subs, and it's been fun to see some of the issues with that. Really cool to run around on the horse. The horse becomes very integral to your experience getting around the island. You can call for him. It's pretty cool. You can actually be running, call for your horse. He'll run up alongside you, and if you hit buttons just right, you can actually hop up and mount the horse as he's running along. So there's no stopping, getting on the horse, or anything else like that. It's very smooth, very fluid. You can jump off of the horse to attack enemies when you unlock a skill later on. And as a nice quality of life on it, as you're picking up collectible things around the island, essentially picking flowers and such, as you go to do that, you don't even have to get off the horse. You can actually pick them up from the horse. So the horse is very much a strong plus for this game, and I found really almost no drawbacks to it. So without spoilers, Ghost Mode is just really, really cool. It is one of my favorite super modes in any game I have ever played. I'm a big fan of the Onimusha series. I've played all 4 of them. I still have them. I played through Onimusha 4 Dawn of Dreams twice, start to finish, including all 500 levels of the Dark Realm. There was 100 levels, but you went through it with each character if you chose to, and there's 5 characters, so that's 500 floors, and I did that twice. That's 1,000 floors of just enemy battles for that, and the whole story start to finish. I've got the sword. Anyway, that had a really cool mode called Oni mode, where you could go into an invincible mode. You got some really cool attacks and everything. For Sekiro, there's no special mode. For Nioh 1, you got Living Weapon. For Nioh 2, you got Yokai form, which you were halfling, and you could temporarily go into a yokai form for that, use yokai abilities and things. Ghost mode, hands down, the coolest thing ever. If you watch the Akira Kurosawa movies, you'll really understand when you see it. It is just really cool. I can't say too much more about it without spoiling things, but my gosh, the way you unlock it when you get it, it's just super cool. It is a fantastic game. I really enjoy it. I was engrossed as soon as I picked it up. I even debated on doing a playthrough, or possibly like one of those live stream things, which I've never done any live stream gaming for it, so I don't even know how that works, but thought about recording myself like storming one of the castles in the game while also wearing my samurai armor at the same time. Had no idea if anybody would be interested in it or if it would be a little bit gimmicky, but that's how much I enjoyed the game. Like, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here, but Ghost of Tsushima, fantastic game, winner of the Player's Voice Awards this year, and very much well-deserved. It is a fantastic game. If you're thinking about a samurai game at all, it would definitely be my first suggestion. Pick it up. So that's going to wrap up my review for this game. Even though this was a video game focused video, my channel covers all things samurai. That's video games, weapons, armor. I'm going to have some upcoming videos on how do you put on samurai armor, common issues with samurai armor, displaying the samurai armor. I'll also be reviewing a few movies, some video clips that I've found on the internet that I think are both interesting and also very terrible, so I'll review and provide some of my commentary on those. But anything and everything samurai is what I intend to have on this channel, so if that's something that interests you, hit the subscribe button below, keep an eye out for my future videos. And with that, we're going to close out. This is Samurai James saying thanks for watching, and sayonara.